Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to our Master of Research MRes programme specific webinar today. We are joined by the programme leader, Marian Brady, who will be leading you through a short presentation, and she also has a couple of colleagues with her who will also be contributing throughout. Just to make you aware, this webinar will be recorded so that we can send it out to anyone who is unable to make it today. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have in the box to the right-hand side of the screen, and we will answer them throughout and after the presentation. Hope you enjoy. Over to you, Marian.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. As Hannah said, my name is Professor Marian Brady. I'm a Professor of Stroke Care and Rehabilitation here at Glasgow Caledonian University, and I've been joined today by Dr. Maggie Laidlaw and Dr. Thulani Moyo, who are both module leaders on this Master of Research degree programme. So I'm going to get started. You might be wondering what's involved in the Master of Research, and I just wanted to share with you some insights into that over the next few slides. So the Master of Research is a programme of formal research training, very broad in terms of its methodological scope, and it's located within the graduate school at GCU. It draws on the wide range of multidisciplinary and methodological research experience and expertise across GCU. It meets the Economic and Social Research Council's research training guidelines in the UK, and it supports research training for a range of other postgraduate degrees. And as a consequence, the student cohort, the student environment that you will be based within is really rich in terms of discussion, multidisciplinary perspectives and focus. So this is a graphic which depicts that rich environment. So you can see that at the heart of it are the MRes GCU students. And through that MRes programme, it's linked to the Scottish Graduate School for Social Science, which is in turn funded by the ESRC, the Economic and Social Research Council. And we are in alignment in terms of the research training guidelines. In addition to that, you might find yourself sitting beside a GCU PhD student who has opted to take on board some of the modules, the formal training that's part of our MRes. You might find yourself sitting next to an MRes bio student in the biological sciences. Some of the DBA students, that's a professional doctorate in business, you may also participate, and even some members of staff may want to brush up on some methodological skills, and they are free to participate in our training too. So as you can see, a really rich environment in terms of learning and discussion. So as part of the MRes, you're expected to complete 4 modules per trimester if you're completing it on a full-time basis over the course of a year. If you're completing the MRes as part-time basis, it will be 2 modules per trimester. Each module is worth 15 credits, and the dissertation in the final trimester is worth 60 credits. Our modules are delivered over a 9-week period, with classes typically running on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And all of our sessions from the year 2024 will be in person and on campus. So this is our MRes teaching structure, teaching timetable. In trimester A, you'll have modules on the nature of research inquiry, critical review of research, an introduction to qualitative research methods, and an introduction to quantitative research methods. In trimester B, you'll have more advanced training on quantitative data analysis, and you'll hear more on that from Thulani later on. And you'll have advanced training on applied skills in qualitative research methods, which you'll hear more on from Maggie later on today. You'll also have modules on research design, research project management, which I lead on. And that's really about you developing your own research ideas to the stage in which they're deliverable in terms of a research project, which you would then plan to do as part of your dissertation. And the last module in that trimester B is the independent and negotiated study. And that's really exciting opportunity to shape and tailor your learning journey to fit your research training needs as you plan to progress towards your master's project and dissertation, which you then complete in trimester C. So there are no formal classes or lectures in trimester C. It's all about your conducting your actual research project under the supervision of somebody with experience in research methods that you're using. So you might be thinking, oh my goodness, well, this is all about research methodology and it's so very broad in terms of multidisciplinary perspectives. But actually, while we might be teaching a whole range of very broad foundational research methods, there's lots of opportunities across the vast majority of modules to tailor your learning as those methodological approaches apply to your specific discipline. And so this is what this graphic represents. So you see the little logo with the book and the magnifying glass. Wherever you see that, the assessment element of that module is an opportunity for you to apply that learning that you have engaged in that module to your own disciplinary area. So you can see that it's really very flexible in terms of, in supporting you to become a future researcher in nursing or in engineering or in law or whatever your disciplinary background might be. So the schedule for assessments looks like this. So for most of the modules, you are expected to submit a written assignment that's typically equivalent to a 3,000-word essay or a critical review or critical appraisal. And as I mentioned, many of these are in the context of your own research discipline. Some are slightly different. So the independent and negotiated study, there's an opportunity to shape that assignment to something that relates to your learning, or maybe an aspiration that you have to develop new learning in terms of creating a new app for something, or a student recently submitted a video presentation of their work. And as long as it's agreed with your module leader, that's me, that's equivalent to a 3,000-word essay, then that's acceptable approach. And then, of course, the master's research project, there are a number of formats for that, but generally speaking, it's equivalent to a 12,000-word dissertation. So why do an MRes? Well, I hope you're all already convinced that it's an important thing to do. I think as an experienced researcher myself, I really think that the MRes is an amazing opportunity to develop that formal, broad methodological foundation in terms of your research skills that is actually a relatively new degree. It certainly wasn't available when I started my research journey. And if you're trying to learn research on the job, it's actually quite difficult to get that broad foundational underpinning understanding of a whole range of research methodologies if you're focused on a particular research project. So the MRes allows you to gain and experience that methodological skills across a whole range of approaches and contexts that would not be available to you if you were learning on the job. The MRes at GCU is fantastic because it allows you to apply that learning to your own specific disciplinary area. And if you later choose then to perhaps go in a different direction in terms of your research career or your career generally, those are very transferable skills for you in terms of your future career. So it supports you in terms of your research journey if you are working towards undertaking a PhD, for example, or in other careers where you are expected to engage with, utilize the findings from research, emerging from research projects. So it really supports you in those activities too. It may be that you've been away from academia for a while and that you are engaging in the MRes as a kind of a brush up and identifying, that you've got some gaps in terms of your research knowledge and your research skills. And again, the MRes is an ideal stepping stone towards future research activities. The MRes at GCU is also really well linked to support students to participate in optional seminars and workshops via the graduate school, and also through that the Scottish Graduate School for Social Sciences. There are many opportunities that emerge through those communications that are accessible to our MRes students as well. And of course, perhaps as important as all of that is the social interaction and support that you get from the student cohort, that are coming from such diverse backgrounds in terms of methodological perspectives and disciplinary perspectives. So I wanted to highlight that, if, at some point on your MRes journey that you actually begin to think, maybe this isn't for me, that's absolutely fine. There are opportunities to exit from your learning with a range of, qualifications, and I just have added this slide in for that reason. So if you've undertaken, one or two modules and you've completed them, well, you could look on that as CPD, continuing professional development activities, and that's fine. But if you've completed 4 modules and you have earned 60 credits in that completion, then you're eligible to graduate with the postgraduate certificate of research. If you complete 120 credits, then you're eligible to graduate with a postgraduate diploma of research. And then if you complete all 180 credits, you are then eligible to graduate with a Master of Research. But what do our students say? Well, I've asked those that recently graduated, and we asked them about their MRes research teaching experience and to what extent they strongly agreed, disagreed, or strongly disagreed with the following statements: that the MRes research teaching will help my future research plans, that it was useful and informative, that it was clear, accessible, and timely. And in fact, 100% of them either strongly agreed or agreed with those statements, which is fantastic feedback from our students. And they also provided us with some qualitative feedback. So they were sharing their perspectives and their experiences, that they felt that the course was really well detailed, very informative, and the lecturers always tried to provide reading materials to make learning easier. Another student described learning about the research proposals, developing your own research proposals, that was particularly helpful. Another talked about the statistics learning, that it was essential for someone who had very little experience of statistics previously. And even if you don't actively use it in your future PhD, it helps with understanding other research. And finally, one final example was a student described it as a profound learning journey, providing me with the essential knowledge and skills required to excel in both my academic pursuits and professional endeavours. So, and I have to say that these were just some examples of many more positive ones. We didn't really get any negative feedback. So, of course, I have been doing a lot of talking so far, but I wanted to highlight that, I'm just one of a whole team of excellent research teachers and researchers as part of the MRes teaching team, and they are listed here, and you can see they're coming from across the various schools at GCU. So from the School of Computing, Energy and Built Environment, the Glasgow School of Business and Society, and the School of Health and Life Sciences. Unfortunately, some of our colleagues weren't able to join us here today. So Dr. George Lomakis, Dr. Janet Finlayson, and Dr. Naveed Hakim. But I'm really pleased to be handing on to Thulani Moyo and Dr. Maggie Laidlaw, who are going to share with you some insights into the modules that they're leading. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Thulani Moyo just now. Thulani. I think you're on mute, Thulani.
Okay, you'll hope we are now used to this COVID working. So anyway, as Marian has said, that I'm one of the module leaders in the quantitative data analysis module. So this module comes in after you've done the introduction into data analysis, which comes in your Tri-A. So it's kind of like a prerequisite anyway, that you have to do the introduction and then you take my module in trimester B, which is more advanced. Just to be, and to state that the way we design this module is in thinking that you might have not done statistics before, so we're trying to capture that idea, so to bring in everyone into speed to what we are trying to do. As you all know, we are all now living in a data driven world, so interpreting data effectively is a very good skill. So statistical data analysis forms the backbone of data interpretation, allowing us to derive insights, make informed decisions, and unearth hidden patterns within data. So you need to have this kind of skill in the modern day that we live in. It is also crucial to understand some statistical concepts, that we live by, when we are working with data. Some of the reasons are statistical techniques help us organize, summarize, and present data in a structured manner, making it easier to understand and draw meaningful conclusions. So, when you go to shops, you'll be scanning your card, you do online shopping, you do this and that. Businesses have a wealth of information about our day-to-day lives. So your job might be to make sense out of this data that has been collected. So you need to make sure that data is clear. Also, by employing statistics or statistical methods, we can make informed decisions based on evidence rather than intuition. Okay, so remember, when we are talking about statistical analysis or quantitative data analysis, we, you know, in terms of philosophical views, we are more on the positivist side. So we want to deal with facts here. So we want to use data to make informed decisions. Statistics also enable us to predict future trends and outcomes, which is invaluable for businesses and various other domains. So a very good skill to acquire. Statistical techniques allow us to assess the reliability and quality of data, helping us to identify and rectify errors. You are also going to be equipped with trying to find out, it will be easy for you to figure out if someone is using data correctly or misusing it. I'm sure you are all aware, we've just gone through elections, and the US will be going through elections, and politicians tend to throw out various information which sometimes might be untrue, but obviously it enables them to win the seats in the government. So your skill will be to make sure that you can make sense, learn how to use facts, to identify what is real and what's not real. And the other thing that is, important concept in statistics is hypothesis testing. Through hypothesis testing, we can evaluate assumptions and test the significance of relationship between variables. So people tend to talk about on average this, on average that. So you will have the skill to make sure that what you say is actually a fact. You learn how to test these hypotheses. And the other key thing to master that we will cover are statistical principles. By statistical principles, you'll be familiar with some of these that we're going to cover, things like descriptive statistics. So when we are dealing with descriptive statistics, here we summarize data and present it. You get to describe the data that you've collected, make sense, get a picture of what the data is trying to tell you before delving deep into deeper data analysis. It includes measures such as median, the mean, the mode, and things like standard deviation, which you know, by the time you finished your classes, you'll be a master at these. We also look at principles such as inferential statistics. Inferential statistics takes your analysis to the next level from descriptive statistics. It involves techniques such as hypothesis testing, confidence intervals, and so forth. These methods help us predict, when we're doing some predictions and inferences about a population based on a sample. So in quantitative data analysis, one of the key things that separate quantitative data analysis and qualitative data analysis are we can make inferences. After we've calculated the data, we can say, well, on average, this is the height of male individuals in Scotland. We can make these inferences, or we can predict stuff using um, inferential statistics. Another principle that you cover, is probability statistics. It deals with uncertainty and randomness. Understanding probability is essential for predicting outcomes and making decisions in uncertain situations. So, which is obviously, you know, one of the key important things in statistics. When sometimes we ask students, if they have a life insurance policy, 90% of the class usually, if I'm talking to year ones, they'll probably say no, they don't have life insurance policies. So they've probably looked at the likelihood of them actually dying. So they use probability statistics in their way to assume that no, you're too young, you're not gonna die. As you get older, you know, you know, people start thinking about these things like insurance covers and all that kind of stuff. So probability statistics is very important. So we cover this stuff as well. And then we look at sampling techniques. Obviously, if we are going to look at the sample to predict, the outcomes for the entire population, we need to pick a sample. So we need to understand sampling techniques. Sampling is the process of selecting a subset of data from a larger population. It is a fundamental concept because working with the entire data set is often impractical. So choosing the right technique is critical to ensure the sample represents the population accurately. So we look at random and non-random sampling. We'll cover this stuff, in classes. Very interesting stuff. And look at things like correlation and causation. You will hear people say, "Well, I'm going to do correlation analysis." Here, it measures the degree to which two variables are related, with causation, which explores the cause and effect between variables. So it's important to differentiate the two. Correlation doesn't mean causation. So we cover this stuff again. And I normally meet students who are so interested in regression analysis as well. So regression analysis is used to model and analyze relationships between variables. It helps in making predictions and understanding the impact on one variable on another. So it's slightly different from correlation. So here we get the value of how one variable affects the other variable. And then probably I might finish off by say looking at the statistical significance. So you will hear me talking a lot about statistical significance when we've analyzed data. So this determines whether an observed effect is likely to be real or if it could have occurred by chance. So sometimes this relationship could have occurred by chance, or there is actually a relationship between the two variables. So using statistical techniques, we can then argue that, well, there is a relationship here between these variables and the relationship is significant. And then what do we do with the hypothesis that we've come up with? Do we reject the hypothesis or do we fail to reject the hypothesis? So significant statistics help us in that manner. So understanding some of these key statistical concepts is essential for everyone involved in data analysis. These principles empower us to make informed decisions, draw meaningful conclusions, and unearth valuable insights from data. So, whether you are in business, healthcare, or any other field, statistical literacy is a valuable asset in today's data driven world. So, as Marian has mentioned in some of the comments from students, that, well, you know, I found it very, helpful to understand some of these things, even though I'm not going to be writing a PhD on statistics and stuff. You know, it's very useful in whatever job you will do, in future, because sometimes you might be presented with journal articles that, are of a statistical nature. You should be able to read these things understand it. So to finish off, I'll you cover things like we'll try to make sure that you understand statistical concept and principles, as I've mentioned. We also want to make sure that you develop software usage. So in this module, you use a software called SPSS. So it's a statistical software that we use. So once you master the software, so we assume that you have no prior background in using the software. So we will show you how, you take a survey, you input it in the software, you make sense out of it, you design it so it, your data, so that it's appropriate for statistical analysis. What we do here, within this software training is similar to what other software requirements would be. So if you use things like Stata and other software, it will be similar. So what the skill that you learn here, it will be applicable to other software in other businesses as well. So it is important that, by the time you finish, you are able to use any statistical software that exists out there. Further, we want to make sure that we promote hands-on understanding of data analysis through practically focused formative examples. So in the lab classes, we will use real examples of data that you manipulate. So it's, whatever you are doing, it's you can actually relate in business and so forth. And finally, we want to make sure that we further advance your communication skills through the preparation of written analysis reports related to practical formative examples during the lab classes, and your practical assessment or the practical summative assessment uses real data as well. So by the time you are using this real data, it helps you in terms of thinking about your own work, see how it relates, to what you are doing in these classes. So I'll probably stop here and give Maggie a chance as well to speak briefly about what she does. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Thilani. That's fantastic. And I know that the listeners will agree. That's just a really exciting module that's so applicable in daily life, just as you highlighted, as well as in terms of research applications. Before I hand on to Maggie, I just see a lot of chat from participants in relation to the start date, and I thought I'd just clarify it here. So while some of you are receiving letters describing a start date in September, teaching across our university does start in September, and there are many induction aspects around that date. But because the MRes modules run for a 9-week period, we actually don't start our teaching on that September date. We actually start in week 3 of our teaching at GCU, which is actually the October date that you've been seeing. So I hope that clarifies things a little bit for those of you that have been posting in the chat. So there's a start date across our teaching calendar across the university for September, but the MRes teaching itself starts in October. Okay, so handing on now, we've just heard about the advanced quantitative data analysis module. We're now going to hear from a different methodological approach about the advanced qualitative skills. And we're going to hear from Dr. Maggie Laidlaw. Thanks, Maggie.
So hi everyone, I'm Dr. Marian Laidlaw and I work in the Glasgow School of Business Society. I mainly work as a researcher, and I work across very large international research projects, which often work with quantitative and qualitative data together. And so while you might think of these two types of data as very separate, quite often they really complement one another. I myself did a Master of Research, so I'm a great supporter of it. I did it many years ago at the Glasgow School of Art. So I was combining academic research with creative practice, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to just really impress that kind of complement that there often is between quantitative and qualitative data. And if you think of it in terms of, the government might tell you that 46% of the population live in poverty or experience poverty, and that's your quantitative statistics. And qualitative data or qualitative research might tell you the impact of living in poverty for a family. So there's a really important complement there that support one another, that tell you how many in the country, but what it's like in people's lives. And it's a way of allowing, quite often it's a way of allowing people to tell their stories. And we often think of qualitative research as interviewing, and it often seems quite simple, a really interesting way to do, because all around us in our kind of digital lives, in our media lives, we see people being interviewed all the time, and it seems like a very easy thing to do. People are very skilled at interviewing when you see them on the television, but these are skills that you really have to learn, and they don't come to you quite so easily as we often might think. So the AskQual module, or the Applied Skills and Qualitative Research module, it builds upon the module in trimester 1, which is the Introduction to Qualitative Research. And again, it's a 9-week module, and the first 4 weeks of that module are really theory-based, where we talk about the different ways of collecting data. What is qualitative research? How do we collect qualitative data? How we go then ahead and think about analysing qualitative data, and we look a bit and we practice a bit of qualitative coding, the very basics, mainly without using software like in Vivo. Just we're going through the kind of practical elements of coding and what it means to read material and think about coding it. And then after the 4 weeks of theory, we have 4 weeks where I invite experienced and professional researchers into the course to provide you with a lecture talking about how they have used a particular methodology in practice. And it really allows you as a student, especially if you're going on to do your dissertation or going to do a PhD, it allows you to see how practitioners use qualitative research in practice within their own research, and what it means and how to use these methodologies. And I would just like to give you a quick rundown of some of the methodologies that we've covered over the years. And this list is not exhaustive, but we've had practitioners talk about photo voice, feminist analysis, discourse analysis, narrative inquiry, grounded theory, poetic inquiry, MZ, collaborative ethnography, focus groups, and biographical histories. And that's just a few of the many presenters that we have in. We have a final week where we recap everything, and we talk about the summative assignment, which is a 3,000-word essay, a reflective essay. And what that means is that you have the opportunity to choose one of the 4. We have the 4 case study practitioners who come in. You choose one of the 4 practitioner case studies that you have listened to or been presented with, and then you critique that in terms of what it is as a methodological tool, and how it might relate to or be appropriate to your own research project. So it's allowing you to really look at and critique a methodological tool and think about whether it would work for you in terms of your own research project. I think that's about all that I had written down. So it encompasses fundamental qualitative coding and analysis, and it incorporates both. That's what I was going to say. It incorporates both traditional and contemporary creative methodologies. So we talk about research, qualitative research methodologies, in terms of interview skills, but also in terms of the collaborative research and creative research methodologies which are becoming very popular now. And in terms of funders, this is a really important area of research that they are looking at. They want collaborative research methodologies. They're looking at creative research methodologies. And then across very large international research projects that you're working with, these types of collaborative research methodologies are really very important, and they work well across multidisciplinary research projects. Yeah, Marian, is there anything else that I've missed?
No, that was really amazing. Thanks so much, Maggie. And, I just emphasize Maggie's point there at the beginning that, while we were talking about quantitative modules and qualitative teaching, actually in terms of methodological approaches, increasingly the very large and successful studies are where these methodologies go hand in hand to get a really holistic view of the research issue that's being investigated. So thank you so much for highlighting that, Maggie. And another fantastic module as well that I know the people listening in are going to enjoy participating in. Okay. So I'm moving on. We've talked a lot about the specifics of the MRes course and the modules, and what that involves. I'm just going to take this scope, the focus outwards a bit to highlight that while participating in the MRes is a really good experience, I hope, is the MRes program is actually run in the context of a wider support network across GCU. And I just wanted to highlight some of the opportunities and support that's available in that broader GCU context. And as a student, you will have access to academic development tutors and the Learning Development Centre to support you in your studies and your studying skills, research skills. There's fantastic support. We have an amazing library and librarians support system to support you in your researching and your learning process. There are student support services which can advise, offer specialist student advice around financial issues or maybe health and well-being. There's a disability service specifically for students, again, to support students with additional support needs. There's a visa immigration support and advice team that are able to support you in relation to visa issues. There's a student association that's very active across the campus. There's a career service and a working hub where you can engage in support to advance your career beyond the MRes, but also for employment opportunities, maybe while you're doing your MRes. There are links with the graduate school, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of access to workshops and seminars. And as I mentioned earlier, links to the ESRC-funded Scottish Graduate School for Social Sciences as well. So that was really the last slide from me. I think that, we've given you an overview of what the MRes is about, what the modules are about, and the wider context within GCU. And I'm really happy to answer any questions that people might have. I think we've addressed most of those in the chat so far, but if anybody has any additional questions, Maggie, Thilani and I would be really happy to answer them. Okay, so lots of positive feedback in the chat on the question and answer section. Really glad that you're looking forward to coming and joining us. Looking forward to meeting you. Do come and say hello when you arrive. And I think just checking again. Yes, so no new questions. Oh, sorry. We have. Do we write exams by the end of each trimester? So the format of assessment, Riscat, is that it's written assignments. So it's not that you're sitting in an exam hall doing a 3-hour exam, but you're writing an assignment or an essay, report, or an appraisal that you then submit online, which your module leader or supervisors will be examining. So that's the nature of the assessment process. Felix, you're asking about dependence, whether MRes allows dependents to come with the student. I think that this might relate to a visa issue. If you're able to confirm that. So, I think in relation to visa, the best source of information would be the visa team that I mentioned earlier. But I would have to emphasize that the MRes at GCU is classified as a taught degree, not a research degree, and that certainly has implications for the visa arrangements. So, feel free to have a chat with the visa team or myself if you want to talk about that further. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for participating today and for your questions and your interest in the MRes. Really looking forward to seeing you. I'd like to thank my co-presenters, Maggie Laidlaw and Thulani Moyo, and to thank Hannah for supporting us in presenting this. So thanks everyone. Oh, Hannah's back.
I'm back. I thought I would just jump in to say thanks to everyone for joining us, and thank you so much to our presenters. That was really, really interesting for me as well, who doesn't know that much about the MRes, so thank you so much. Just to say quickly, Felix, I know you had a question around dependents. That is, as Marian says, related to visa and admissions. So you should have an admissions contact on your offer letter. So please feel free just to respond to that, and they'll be able to get in touch with you with some further information on the dependent situation. But yes, on the whole, thank you so much to everyone. And if anyone has any further questions, please just get in touch with us at inquiries@gcu.ac.uk. We'll be happy to answer them. But thank you so much. And thanks again to our presenters.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye and good luck.